Hi everybody, welcome back to the Rummage Workshop. Today I'm going to be transforming this Art Deco dresser that I found on Facebook Marketplace for $65. This piece is actually in great condition considering it's around a century old. There are the expected dings and the finish is failing in several areas. This is pretty common for a piece this age. The veneer is peeling up all over this piece and two of the handles are broken or missing, so I'm going to have to source new hardware as well. It also looks like the kick plate has been through hell, but nothing that a good layer of Bondo can't cure. Just look at that inlay, it's so pretty, I love it so much. There's also some pretty severe water damage on the top veneer that I'll have to contend with. Some of the drawers are sticking just slightly, so I'm gonna give everything a quick sand to knock back any areas where there seems to be any friction. But overall, this piece is in great shape and I can't wait to dive right in. Alright, so I just got done with my day job inside and I am ready to start diving in on this project and I'm so excited. I did quite a bit of research on my design plan last night. I was absolutely inspired by some pictures that I saw on Instagram and by this color by Melange Paint. It's Coralcotta and it's this like warm pink terracotta color. I just absolutely love it. I'm gonna expose this wood in the center and this is gonna be like the star of the show. I really want it to be a light stain, so really light wood where the grain is popping through. And then I had to order new hardware. Hopefully the hardware does not suck and it actually fits because I do not want to be drilling new hardware holes in here because I'm not going to be painting. Hopefully it fits, but who the hell knows, right? Let's dive right in. It's time to sand, Bondo, and hopefully get cleaning done tonight as well. First off, I start by removing all the hardware, pulling out the drawers, and then checking every drawer runner as I go. Next, I start tackling the damaged veneer. This veneer is trashed, so my job is to make sure that none of this damage is going to affect my finish down the road. So I peeled up all of the veneer that's cracked and brittle and where the glue is failing. I'm not gentle during this process. As you can see on the kick plate, I have on gloves and I'm pulling at the edges pretty hard actually to see if anything releases. Quite a bit of veneer came off at this stage and was so brittle that it wasn't worth trying to glue it back down. So next I mix up some Bondo, which is technically for auto body repair. That's why I love it. It dries rock hard, adheres really well, dries quickly, and it can be sanded down flush to your surface. So if you're rebuilding corners or filling larger spaces like this, Bondo is definitely the way to go. While that Bondo cures, I load up my sander with 150 grit sandpaper and sand away the original finish. This veneer is really old and really thin, so I'm taking my time here, letting the sander do the work and following the wood grain, which is actually set on a bias on this. Once the finish is removed, I come in with a 220 grit sanding block to knock back any roller marks and to refine the texture. Later that night, I came back and sanded smooth the Bondo. I use 150 grit sandpaper, and because Bondo is so hard, be prepared to change out your sandpaper often. Next, I scuff sanded the entire box and buffed out the drawer runners. Unfortunately, instead of taking a video of this process, I took this very helpful photograph instead. It's definitely not the first time I've done this, and it won't be the last, I can guarantee it. So now that everything's patched and sanded, it's time to clean. I'm spraying on a TSB alternative from top to bottom and scrubbing away all of the sanding dust and any grime that was left behind after I sanded. Next, I mixed up a light wet wash for the drawer fronts. You want this mixture to be watery and opaque. Make sure to mix up enough for your entire project so your wash is consistent. I mixed up about, I'd say about a half cup here. I want these drawers to have a bright antiqued effect. I think it's going to be an elegant contrast to the color I've chosen. Next, I'm going to spray on my Zinsser Ben shellac based primer. This will give us a single substrate to paint over and help block any stains or tannins. I let this layer dry for an hour, then I gave it a light sand and then added a second coat. I then let that cure overnight. By the next morning, the hardware had arrived. I found that the holes were just slightly off, so I widened the inner hole out with a drill. I love the subtle Art Deco shape of this hardware, however I'm not loving the color. I want it to be more of an antiqued bronze. After widening all the holes on the drawers, I started prepping the hardware for spray. As I sanded them down though to scuff up the surface, I found that the color underneath the finish was almost exactly what I was going for, so I switched to a 400 grit sandpaper and buffed away the finish on every piece. I love when that happens. Now it's finally time to spray on the paint. Once again, I'm using Melange Paints 1 in the color Coralcotta. In the time it's taken me to prep this piece, I've only become more obsessed with this color. I love it. I poured a little over half the container into a plastic cup, then slowly added in water to thin the paint until it looks like pancake batter. Then I put it through a paint strainer to prevent any clumps from clogging up my gun. If you want to know more about how I spray paint, I have a comprehensive video on my spray gun setup linked in the description box below. I sprayed on 2 coats of paint, sanding lightly between each coat. The dry time on this paint was a little longer than normal because it was so cold outside, so about 2 hours between each layer. So I got the dresser sprayed last night, and here's a great example of why I cover everything important when I spray, because this is not overspray, it's actually the mist that's left in the air as it settles and dries. It will land on anything it can touch, and it can actually end up staining stuff. Once both coats had dried thoroughly, I put the drawers back into their slots and sprayed on 2 coats of bare water-based polyurethane and a satin sheen. Now it's time to put everything back together. I reattached the hardware, and let me remind you of what this dresser looked like before and what it looks like now. Thank you guys for following along with me on this project. I'll see you back here next week for another transformation from the Rummage workshop.